Hello, 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 Facebook. Hello, YouTube. Hello, LinkedIn. Hello, world. How are you? How are you? This is Henry Sally for the African Alumni Association. Today we have a discussion, the pre-event for the gown, the African Scholars Awards. We do have two panelists to participate in this conversation, Sulaiman Jallo and Mase Wetutu. They are going to tell you more about themselves, but before we start, I want to invite the Senior Volunteer Coordinator to recite the land acknowledgement. Catherine, nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. Can you start the land acknowledgement, please?
Right, thank you. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto African Alumni Association operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of Huron Wounded and the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have this opportunity to work on this land. Thank you, Henry, and back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Kathy. So at this moment, I am going to invite or bring on our panelists, starting with Mase Wetutu and Hello. So you're going to mute yourself. Can you mute yourself? Yes, you need to. There you go. Well, no, I don't. I want you to mute your mobiles or your computers, because you need to speak. You need to speak to the to the people. They need to listen to you. So mute your devices or your computers. All right. Why don't we start with Mase? Unmute yourself. You're going to unmute yourself. All right. Unmute.
Sorry, I think we have too many devices that we have to make sure that they're not
too many devices. Sulaiman, you also need to unmute yourself, because at some point you're going to start talking.
Yeah, sure. Unmuted.
We are putting on airplane mode, even though we are going.
Whose echo is that?
It's probably me. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't have anything really loud here, but am I echoing?
Yes. Do you have another device? Do you have another cell phone or computer or iPad, whatever you're listening to?
I can try use my cell phone, but let me try. I would have to place it somewhere so that it's.
Well, you can use your. I'm asking you to put minimum. Put the volume to minimum. The volume of your cell phone to minimum.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is on mute right now. It's like silent right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is the echo really bad? Because then I can log in using my phone probably. Is it bad from your side, Mase?
It's not that bad. I think.
No, I can leave. Maybe you can try and put it in airplane mode. Maybe see if that helps.
Okay.
Yes, if you are.
Yeah, it's in airplane mode now. Let's see if that helps.
All right.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay, great.
Okay, we're good.
A little, not completely. So this is the gown African Scholars Awards 2020. And we are having a post-event discussion with two. I don't like the sound. I don't like the echo. I don't like the echo.
It's okay, Henry. I think with technology these days and with these meetings online.
Oh my
I
goodness.
think I'm echoing too.
It's not good.
It's I think I think it's a feedback. I'm
I
trying
think it's
to
the
think what.
feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the feedback.
Okay, we can mute while you talk, and then we can unmute when we want to talk. Does that maybe that might be better?
Yeah.
We can
You
mute
can,
ourselves while you're talking. Is that okay?
you can try to mute and see how it's going to turn out. How it's going to turn out. We shall see. Yeah. So when I'm talking, it's okay. Hopefully, when you are talking, it's also going to be fine. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Keeping my fingers crossed. Okay, so for those of you who do not know who these two lady and gentlemen are, one of them is Mercy, the other one is Slyman. Both of them, the 2020 the Gown African Scholars Award recipients. One is an outstanding recent alumni. The other one is an emerging scholar. An emerging scholar. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Mercy. I'm going to start with the lady to introduce herself. I'm not going to read your bio because we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. So unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and tell us who you are.
Okay, so I think this is where we are doing the elevator pitch. So my names are Masilele Anwatetu Gishuki, and I'm a PhD student in McMaster University. I'm taking global health studies. So my background is my master's is in public health. I had a master's in public health. I have a BA from U of T in women and gender studies and political science, and another one from Catholic University in Kenya on communication. I have an interest stream, like I have a lot of interest that range widely. So my passion is working with the community. So I have been working with people living with HIV and AIDS for a span of over 20 years now. I think that makes me super old, but it's all good. And also working with women and girls fleeing gender-based violence or any other health inequities that afflict women and girls. So my interest for women and girls stems from when I was 10 years old, and I had, I could see my former headmistress and my mom fighting for girl child education, joining Faraway. When women went to Beijing, I don't know if Henry and Suleiman know, like in 1985. And I think in that conference is one of the most powerful conferences in the history of fighting for women equitable rights. And I think one of the famous speeches is from Hillary Clinton on acknowledging that women rights are human rights.
Right.
And yeah, so that for me was a spin-off moment, and since then I've been interested in this fight. So currently I'm a program manager in a women and children's shelter fleeing gender violence. What else am I working on? Yeah, so pretty much that is it. I also have a passion of working with indigenous communities, of farming and working in solidarity in the missing and murdered of indigenous women and girls. So when, we do land acclamations, it also makes me reflect on myself and check myself and see, am I standing in solidarity, and then am I putting efforts to do the work, or am I just doing land acknowledgement, but without really saying what my commitments are to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So yeah, so
And
that is
that,
it.
and that, my friends, is an understatement. She has done so much more than that. Of course, the elevator pitch cannot fully speak to what she has done. And as we are going to have the conversation, you'll hear more about Mercy. But for now, why don't we hear from Sulaiman? Who is Sulaiman, and how did you get here?
Am I echoing still? Because that's
No.
We good? Okay, hi everyone. My name is Sulaiman Jallo, and I'm originally from Freetown, Sierra Leone, a very small country in West Africa, which is not as popular as Uganda and and the Kenyas and the Ghanas, but yeah, we are right there at, just next to the Atlantic Ocean. Um, my my background really is I left home in 2012 on a scholarship. Went to Singapore. That was my first stop, and I finished my IB program. And then I got a scholarship with the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program. Came to UFT in 2014, and then I finished a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. Then went to work for a year in the chemical industry, and then I was able to come back through the sponsorship with the Mastercard Foundation again, and then did a master's in engineering that focused on sustainable energy and something called ELITE. And ELITE is basically entrepreneurship, leadership, innovation, technology, and engineering. So that's my academic background. Right now, I'm currently working in the energy industry. I work for Prism Group, energy and energy cables and systems company, one of the best in the world in that area, really. And I'm working as an engineer in training. It's been an incredible learning experience. I'm rotating between R&D, operations, logistics, supply chain, and the commercial or business aspect of the business. I'm really learning right now. And yeah, that is basically my background. I look forward to this event. I think it's an incredible space that we have here to be able to, just explore the celebration of Black talent and, Black excellence, as well as, given the time we're in, Black History Month. I look forward to having this discussion. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you so much. Thank you. First of all, I want to congratulate you both for being here, sitting in these, occupying these spaces, sitting in these spaces, and being the 2020 the Gown African Scholars Award recipients. Of course, we do go through a very intensive process getting you guys here. So you are definitely watched. We watch you, we see you, we appreciate you, and we are celebrating you. But as we go forward in celebrating you, we are curious. We just had the ceremony last weekend, last Friday. How did it go for you guys? And what did you learn in the process? What do you think we can do better next time? And why do you think having this space is important, really, despite the circumstances, despite the COVID circumstances? Who wants to go first?
Okay. So, so I think despite the circumstances that the event was really beautiful, I think just to have the spaces where is Black student and specifically African students, where we have spaces for our spaces where we can congregate, spaces where our work is seen, our work is recognized, where we are feeling that we are appreciated, that we are making contributions to the community. Like just that in itself is huge, right? Like I remember Henry, I know you and I go way back into our years in undergraduate in UFT, and just looking at remembering you working so hard to create spaces for us to occupy, because there were spaces, but did they really belong to us? Not really. So often you'd be sitting in these spaces, but you'd be feeling like you're a guest, but yet you're a student, just like everybody else within the university. So and you'll see like a lot of different communities congregating in different settings. Yet the spaces that have been created where students can feel comfortable, not everybody is comfortable in these spaces. And you look at you ask your questions, why, right? Why do we feel that these spaces don't belong to us? And why do we have to create spaces where we have to be seen, where we have to showcase ourselves. In a way, we always, I think, like in a lot of things that we do as African people, we're always working 3 times or 4 times harder than everybody else, so then um, we can be seen and appreciated. So for you to create this space, it's felt, it's seen, it's not something that we're taking for granted. And for me, what I hope for is to see that a lot of students are involved in the forum, and not just current students. As it's, it's alumni, it's professors, it's just the whole community of academia in the African setting, and also just carving that space where you recognize that as African students, we have our own different struggles, from the Black students, from the Canadian Black student, from the Caribbean Black students, right? And just making sure that we're not all lumped up into one person, because we are really diverse. Even within our own African settings, we are very diverse, right? And it's just understanding that diversity and what we're bringing back into our own specific countries, as well as into the continent, and it was well as enriching our communities here in the diaspora.
Yeah, that's very important. Yes. I know you have mentioned very many other aspects of this inclusion, pretty much. Creating spaces. Like, the spaces are always there. The question is, do you fit into these spaces? And I think that's one of the aspects that you have touched on. That even though the spaces were there, and yes, I remember our undergraduate studies at UT. Of course, my life has been a life of advocacy pretty much since my undergrad, working and serving as a vice president external for the Students' Union, and pretty much trying to elevate our voices. But then you graduate and then realize that, oh my goodness, I have been in a bubble. The world is completely different. And then you get a chance to get back into a similar setting, a university. And then you try to analyze it, you try to examine these spaces that we work within, that we occupy on a day-to-day basis. And you realize that, you know what, the spaces are available, but do we belong? And that's why we create these spaces, to ensure that people like you and I feel like we belong in these spaces. Suleiman, what was your experience as a student?
Here we go again with the echoing. Hopefully not. Yeah, I think Marcy put it really well. I think that the event was really incredible, and I think what was echoed throughout was the value of recognizing Black excellence, African Black excellence, really in this case, and just understanding that whilst there might be spaces around, I think the most important thing is feeling like you belong, like we all keep talking about. And I think that also the value of knowing where we come from and wanting to give back, basically at the back of our minds, no matter where you are. I think one thing that was echoed throughout the event was that we need to always look back and realize that there's always something we can do to help back home, to help elevate, help uplift others. And that's the true essence, really. And I think my experience as a student at UFT, within the MasterCard Foundation itself, the MasterCard Foundation really focus on sub-Saharan African countries. So they bring in students from all across Africa, in the sub-Saharan region. And there I was able to see really the challenges that African students do go through relative to other Black students that might come from the Caribbean or other places, So I think it was a bigger shift for people coming from, say, Kenya or Ghana to transition to the Canadian system, whether the weather, just the way the school system is, and just that adaptation and shift was very difficult and challenging for most people. So partly my role I was a student rep when I was in undergrad. I was able to organize the first ever orientation program for the MasterCard Foundation. scholars program for the second after my year group, the year that came after us, they had the experience of having an orientation where we help them, we help them just get familiar with the surrounding, help them transition into Canada, help them just get groceries, where to get cheaper groceries or where to just get like cheaper clothes, just helping them really transition really, to a new environment that they're not exposed to, So again, I think for me, essentially a space like the African Alumni Association Scholars Awards is basically it resonates with the fact that it would allow us to be more visible as black scholars.
Yeah, thank you so much. And especially the idea of orienting new students, new African students into this community, into the Canadian society, telling them where to find which kinds of foods that they are familiar with, where to find those foods, where to find cheap clothes, where to find the community that you built within the University of Toronto. I think that's very, very important. I know there is one organization that was also created, the East African Students Association, which I do not see anymore. It has literally lost visibility within the university community, and that is something that you will speak to later, Sulaiman, because you're participating into that community. I need to understand what happened to that group, where is it, and why is it important that we sustain these spaces once we get into these spaces? How do we maintain our presence into those spaces? Before I go to Mercy, I want to quote one of the I want to quote Dr. Segane Musisi. In his speech, he said that I believe the problems we have in Africa are solvable if only we dedicate ourselves to their solutions. Wherever you are in the diaspora or on the continent, always make sure you give something to better the continent. Mercy, why don't you tell us, how does that quotation resonate with you? A little bit of background with Dr. Musi. This is a professor who came here as a student, obviously, about 30 years ago. Studied at the University of Toronto. Was the first black psychotherapist, psychiatrist at the University Health Network, or University General Hospital. So essentially, he is one of the people who have created pathways for us who have come later on to even have an initiation to start having these conversations, to have space to engage with these conversations. When you hear him say that our African problems or the problems of Africa are solvable, what do you think he means by that?
So first, I want to. So our problems are inherited. A lot of them are inherited, right? So we are a colony of the British Empire, the French, the Belgium, starting going back to the partition and division of the continent in itself. That's where we started inheriting a lot of these problems. And even after a lot of the countries gained their independence, we're still struggling with our infrastructures. We're still struggling with debts. We're still exporting our best raw materials to, outside of the continent. So when we look at, we have the raw materials, but do we have the capacity to work with them and to better the lives of the people that are living, there? So when we look at our parents, and let me look at my parents, and I look at my parents and the hassle that they have gone through to put us through school, right? Like every year, school fees is increasing. A lot of parents are not in positions to afford to send their children to school, right? So when one child is sent to school, and they qualify, they move along, then they come abroad and everything, then it's their responsibility and their duty to give back to the community. So I come from the concept of Harambe, and Harambe meaning, like, yeah, we come together,
Yeah.
we're supporting this one person to make it, right? And Harambe mentality is, if you're building you a house, we all gonna come in with the building materials. So I'll bring the bricks, Lemon is gonna bring the iron sheet, you're gonna bring the water, somebody else is gonna be stepping on the mud, so for us to be able to build this house for you. And when we step back and you move into that house, you feel good, but you know that your community rallied behind you to do this. So when our communities rally behind us to make sure that we are advancing, that advancement is not for us to selfishly keep to ourselves. They're investing in us so we can invest back into our community, so we can invest back into the continent. So if we have the knowledge, if we have the skill sets, so it's our responsibility to come back and teach those skill sets and build infrastructure and rebuild factories. Because one thing the colonialists did was build some factories, but did we maintain those factories, right? So we are we look at our leaders, right, from a political perspective. Our leaders are so greedy that they're always taking, but they're not giving back to the community. So the community is marred in poverty over and over. So breaking that cycle of poverty is not easy, because they're not catching a break, right? And we try to go to the ballots and vote fairly, but does that always happen? It doesn't,
Right,
because
right.
of all the mud, of all the dirty politics that is it's foundation of us. So if we can solve some of these problems, that if we can solve some of the politics that hinder us moving forward, if we can rebuild our infrastructure, if we can rebuild our factories and create job opportunities for our communities, if we can go back and teach the skill sets that we have back to our communities, then I think we're a little bit far ahead and we're a little bit better. So if the raw materials that we are growing, the cash crops, the raw materials, if we can find sources for us to, manufacture things and resell, if it's, I go back to public health because that is my forte. And if we're investing in people's health, right, then if we're improving the quality of life for people, then people are living longer, people are investing more into working, into doing things that should be improving their quality of life. People are eating better and all these pieces, but it goes back to our leadership. It goes back to the resources that we have and what we are using with them. It goes back to breaking the cycle of poverty, so
Yes, the
we can better
resources.
the quality of life.
And I think when you talk about the resources, you're also thinking about yourself, because that's what it means to be a resource. And I think we need to reevaluate the way we see leaders or leadership, both within the African context and the diaspora context. I think you are the leaders of today, and it's incumbent upon you to keep whoever is managing the affairs of the African countries, the African governments, accountable in whichever way that you can. So I think Professor Musisi is trying to tell us, to give us the responsibility, to put it upon us, to ensure that we do whatever we can, however small we might think it is, in our power, to ensure that we contribute to the growth of the African continent.
That's why we're always sending remittance to make it better, and that's why we're always paying school fees for 1, 2, 3 people to improve it, right?
That's
Yeah,
true. That's
you know very well. Africa tells you you're the leader. The youth is the leaders of tomorrow, never today. So you're right. It's up to us to change the narrative.
We
And
have to change the narrative.
yes.
We have to change the narrative. In his speeches, in his speech, David Palmer referred to you guys as exceptional role models. What does that mean to you, Sulaiman? And before you actually elaborate on that, can you tell us more about spaces, creating these spaces and being in these spaces? What happened to the East African Students Association? Why isn't it as active as when it started? What happens to such organizations that are created but then phase away? Do we have no East African students anymore? Or is it that the role it was created to do is no longer available or necessary? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. So basically, I think that the East African Student Association was formed by a couple of students from Kenya. They started it. It was going really well. I think at the start, like you said, it had some traction. They had some good amount of people joined. I think that if you look back at the University of Toronto, St. George campus, because that's where I was, that's where I actually know much about. We have a lot of Black student associations. We have the African ASA, which is the African Student Association. We have the NSA, we have the Nigerian Student Association, and then we have the BGSA, which is the Black Grad, and then we have NESB, which I'm wearing right now, the National Society of Black Engineers, which I was also part of for my time at TFT. So, the difference between, some of the clubs that have, had a very strong history since they started, they've done really well. And the ones that just started, like the East African Student Association, and did not probably continue, was just leadership, having a team of people that were probably like dedicated to pass it on to the next group. Because the way you keep a club going is that when you have this leadership team for this academic year, before the year ends, before April, end of that year, you need to have a re-election, and then you have to campaign and get people to apply for positions and encourage them to occupy these spaces once you leave, and I think that it did not probably, that didn't happen the way it was supposed to. That's what I would say to that particular question. And I think the other question was to do with the
exceptional role models. Exceptional role models.
Exceptional role models. Yeah, role models. I think it's a profound statement. Again, I think we talk about leadership. We talk about being students at the University of Toronto. I think in my perspective, from my perspective, I think what that means really is that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility towards ourselves. We have a responsibility towards the community we occupy. We have a responsibility towards the people that we lead, if we lead in spaces, and we have a responsibility to uplifting others, and giving back, and all the things that come with just being a leader or being in a space where someone else is looking up to you. So being a role model is someone that inspires, provide direction, provide support, provide spaces like you are doing with the African Scholars Award, and so that other people are inspired to occupy those spaces and continue on that legacy, on that journey of making things better for other people, really.
Mercy, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, when people call you a role model, they give you a lot of responsibilities, right? Because you have to you have to live up to the belief they have in you. So I think, as Sulaiman says, like, when we look at you, for example, like you've paved the way for a lot of people. You've created spaces for a lot of people. You're accessible person where you create opportunities and support people in building networks and linking people in different spaces. I don't know if it's a talent or what it is, but that's what you do for us. So when I look at myself in the spaces that I occupy, for me, it's just making sure that if we have new students, as Lemon had pointed out earlier, is that I'm making sure that they're not learning lessons that they don't necessarily have to learn. If I went through them, then I'll share my experiences so then I can spare them that, right? Like when we come to these spaces, in light of Black History Month, we come from spaces with people that look like us, right? And
Right.
the first time you have to go through an experience of racism, it's very, very disconcerting. It's very difficult, right? To first you're like, what did I just go through, right? Like for you to comprehend, and then we don't look at it that it has like a residual um trauma that is left within you, and it's something that you keep processing and reprocessing. So just for me, role modeling is modeling, supporting people in understanding that in these spaces you may have to go through things like racism, things that you didn't have to think before that you could go through, and this is how it looks like, and this is how it could impact you. It's looking at students who have to live by themselves and looking at how do I create networks for them to be able to navigate the system a little bit better than I was able to navigate the system. It's where are opportunities, where can I link you up to opportunities, who can I refer to, who can support you in your own growth, how can I mentor somebody, right? How do I encourage you to go back to school to pursue something? How do I
Right.
encourage you not to give
Right.
up, right? It's
Yeah.
looking at all these aspects and creating spaces where within the community where people feel comfortable to refer to me, or for me to be able to refer people back outside.
As we celebrate Black History Month, of course, today is the 3rd of February. We all know that February is the shortest month in the year. But nevertheless, it's the Black History Month. So, how does Black Africans engage in these conversations? How do we contribute to Black History Month? What are some of the stories that we must tell? How can we collaborate with our peers to ensure that we actually bring to the fore the conversations that must be had by the people in power? Sulaiman, I know you're going to leave us in about 5 minutes. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are and what suggestions, what counsel do you want to share with the people who are watching you right now?
Yeah, Henry, thanks. Thanks for the question. I think Black History Month really, I think is a powerful time. Every year, it's an opportunity for Black people around the world to really engage in conversations of just looking back at our history as Black people, how far we've come from, and how hard we've worked to occupy spaces in so many realms, around the world, whether be it leadership, redefining our image as people and how we are seen, whether in the classroom itself, redefining what value we bring to the table, and just realizing that we have talent, we have skill sets, we have what it takes to do whatever someone else can do, really, regardless of our color, not being defined by our color, or limited by that to not do what we are supposed to do, really. And I think that it's like a quote that really sums up for me this month is that it's one by Cleo Wade, who said that basically we honor the dream by doing the work. And the dreams of Martin Luther King, the dreams of all the people who have fought so hard for us to be at a place to have rights, to occupy spaces. We honor those dreams. We honor the dreams of our parents, the dreams of the African continent, the dreams of us wanting to be equals to other people by doing the work. And I think that creating spaces and creating opportunities, creating support structures, instilling self-belief and really motivating other people is one of the best ways we can do that. And for me, this month is that really having conversations around our history, having conversations about our culture, having conversations about the things that we are still yet working on, trying to fill the gaps to really be at a place where we are better. And that's a summation for me, really.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mercy, I know you are in public health. As we navigate the COVID pandemic, and in reference to what Suleiman has just shared, how do you think we should navigate? This is the first Black History Month we are engaging with during a pandemic. What are some of the challenges that people who look like you and me are facing in this pandemic, and how can we grow beyond those challenges to ensure that we are not left behind?
I think, like in the words of Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality theories, it's looking at us and all the things that we have to navigate through, right? Like we're not only being impacted by our race, we're looking at the other impacts like poverty. You find like Black communities are pretty much marginalized. You're the ones like we have to hustle for housing, we have to navigate around food insecurities, we have to navigate around police brutalities. As everyone knows, like I think last June, the racism was acknowledged as a public health crisis, right? In the light of Black Lives Matter and what was happening both here and in the United States. So as we navigate the pandemic, we have to acknowledge that we're not only looking at the impact the pandemic is having on us through our mental health, through the economics. We are looking at Black people as occupying the essential jobs, right? We are at the front lines. So when policies are being put in place, are these policies factoring in that we just because of job markets, a lot of our people are working as PSWs, as nurses, and the policies in place don't favor them. They have to navigate that. I'm a lone parent. I work in frontline. I have to navigate where I'm going to put my child, even schools with school closures, right? So the policies that are being made, are they reflective of my actual reality? They're not right now, right?
Yeah.
And when we look at who have lost their jobs, we have a lot of people with precarious status. How are they being supported? They still have to live within this city. Food prices have gone up. How are people making ends meet? People on social welfare, people on ODSP, those incomes didn't go up, right? And they still have to live on incomes that are here. For a minute, the bus transportation was cut off for people who take buses. They had to Uber for all this social distancing. People can't afford these things. When you look at our health data, if it's being collected, then is it being used appropriately? Or is it being used to further marginalize the Black community? If we don't collect health data, do we really know what is happening within the Black community? So, right, we're always caught up within this rock and a hard place, and we're always finding ourselves trying to advocate for better for us. But for me, it's in the policies that are being made, and it's in the right now. I don't see a lot of policies that are reflecting the reality of the Black community, really. So,
in other words, you're always trying to catch up, play catch up.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suleiman, you graduated as a STEM student. Obviously, you came here as a STEM student. How did you succeed in that in those spaces, and what would you advise someone who is in high school, who is hoping to come to University of Toronto and enter into STEM? And your final remarks before you run away, because I know you have a meeting in a couple of minutes.
Oh, it's fine. I'll stay. I'll stay for the time. I'll stay till 1:30. Really.
Okay.
Yeah. So it should be fine. Yeah. your question is like advices
Yeah, first how you navigated those spaces as a STEM student from an African background. How
right.
you have been able to succeed, not just throughout your undergraduate studies, but also your graduate studies, uh, and being able to enter into the job market, being able to enter into the job market. Uh, and also being able to succeed and be an exceptional uh, role model, pretty much as they have defined you.
Right. Thanks, Ali. Basically, I think it's not an easy journey, really. When I look back, like I said, I left home in 2012. I was probably like 16, 17. And when I went to Singapore, that's where I started. I really liked the sciences since I was in high school back home. So it's always been my first go-to. I loved math and just the science itself and chemistry and physics. So when I went to Singapore, that's why I started taking up, just focusing my studies within that. For the IB, I chose high-level chemistry, high-level physics, and high-level maths. And that's where I really started like experiencing the challenges of being away from home, being in a different space. I was in Asia, and you got a lot of smart people, like extremely smart. And Singapore, I would tell you, it's one of those places where the educational system is so good. So it is it's very challenging to do really well because everyone is a high performer. So that's where I started getting this culture of having to work harder and just instilling that level of like, I gotta go the extra mile to put up with other people because I was behind in so many ways. I was not good with computers because back home our educational system didn't have that kind of stuff. The calculators that they used was different and everything was a level up. So I had to work extra hard to match that gap basically. And navigating through that and coming to UFT, 80,000 students, classes are about 100 people sometimes in a classroom, and being one or two Black people in the classroom really was even a bigger challenge, right? Because the way you are seen, whether or not people can question whether or not you're smart, you might be in a group with like 3 other students who are not of your color, and they might look at you differently because they think that you cannot deliver on the project goals, right? Or they might be even worried about giving you high-level aspects of the project because they think that because you're Black, you might not have the skill sets, so that they want an A. So they might think that you might bring them down, So I think it's mindset, really. It goes back to the mindset and just really being grounded in the idea that you're going to face challenges through school, through university, through whether it be a UFT or anywhere else. And seeking support, really. I think that I had a group of people around me that were very supportive and, having study buddies, people who are good at stuff. So again, it goes back to the idea that, you might be smart, but trust me, having a few people around you that are smarter than you sometimes actually inspire you to do more. Right. So I had people around me that actually inspired me to want to work harder because they did so well. And they were good in some areas that I wasn't so good. So just exchanging ideas, seeking help from them, and just spending time with people that are probably in line with your values, sort of like where you want to get to. If you are someone who wants to succeed, you want to be around people who are hardworking, right? So I think that for someone who is thinking of coming to UFT or thinking of going through that journey of navigating school, I would say that it is very important to have a good mindset and be open to opportunities and know that there will be challenges, but also be ready to seek support from the right network, right people, and mentorship is so important. So important. I'll stress it so much because having a mentor is really, really powerful. It got me through a lot. Having someone to talk to that you can trust about issues, being away from home, not having family, emotionally, it can be tough, right? If you're a scholar, say, right, you don't have family here. So having a group of people that are, a strong supportive network goes a long way. And, pushing yourself, taking up leadership roles within spaces, challenging yourself, those things can make a lot of difference.
Right.
I don't know. I think I've said a lot. I don't know if I have
Well,
the time is very small,
you
but
have
yeah.
definitely said a lot of people. I'm just wondering what my sister Lydian thinks about what your thoughts have. Like the, what do you think about Suleimani's thoughts, and how do you relate them to your own journey as an African woman, an accented African uh, woman who is now pursuing a PhD in public health? How did you get there? What would you tell an African who just migrated here, perhaps completed an undergrad, struggling to go through the job market, that there's more, that if you don't feel appreciated enough, uh, you can pursue even other avenues?
Um, I think it's just explain to people that they have to understand that it's a new country. You have to navigate a lot, right? So if you like Suleiman says, if you have the right people to help you in that navigating, it cuts in half what you have to go through for you to get there, right? So if you have right people who point you like, don't go through this route because this route is going to be longer for you to achieve the dreams that you have set up for yourself. If you use this alternative route, you're gonna be in a better position for you to achieve what you need. When I came here, I had a communication and journalism background, but then everybody tells you because of your accent, nobody's gonna be hiring you at CBC and everything, right? So you're like, okay, so I have an undergrad, but what do I do with it, right? Like, okay, so just humbling yourself and be like, I have to go back to school because you go looking for work and the one thing that was constant for me was that you need Canadian experience. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing HIV work. I'm looking work within a field that is familiar to me, right? And then having people who interview for positions that they don't understand themselves, and then yet you prove you can do the job, but you still don't get the job because you're not the ideal person. So as a Black woman, you have to realize that I have a lot that is not right going for me, right? I got my Blackness, I got my this sexism like right there, right?
Right.
And now I'm a lone parent, so you have all those things that are all these three strikes against you, and you're thinking, how am I going to make it? But I think it's in the fact of who do you build within your circles? Who are the circles of who is in your support system to provide that support for you? Who's advising you? Who's guiding you? And just having the attitude of owning your Blackness. As you can see, no apologies, right? Being authentically yourself. Ensuring that your truth is spoken, no apologies, and just being authentic, and you'll get where you need to be when the time is right. But you can like in this space, you cannot afford to give up. You always have to be. Unfortunately, you always have to be 5 steps ahead of the next person because one thing will make you be overlooked for something, right?
So you cannot give up. You cannot give up.
No, that's a giving up is a luxury. That's a
There's no,
luxury, a privilege you're not afforded, right? You're always constantly working hard to better yourself. It's always
right.
looking for opportunities to improve yourself, improve your communities. It's always being linked because if people know of opportunities that suit you, they'll point you in that direction. So when it's your turn to give back, then you look at who I have this opportunity. Who do I recommend it to? So you look to see like promoting Black excellence throughout in different spaces, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, you have to have mentors. So the community that you keep around yourself, the mentors, your friends, you have to have people. Your friends should mirror your vision, essentially. If you want to be up there, you got to surround yourself with people who are working hard to get there. Uh, have mentors. Those are like cheat sheets because they help you understand the system, and they guide you when you are going astray. Because I'm pretty sure there's always that feeling that, you know what, I've already done enough. What more can I do? What more can I do? Yet, there's no room for giving up. As we wrap up this conversation, Suleiman, what do you want the person who's watching you out there to live with today from this conversation?
Yeah, I think I want to just end by saying that don't give up. Really, like seriously, I think that we have powerful stories. I think every single person, I think one thing that I've grown to appreciate is that every single person has gone through a lot. You know, to be where you are, you must have gone through so much. You know, some good experience, some bad experiences, learning basically, you know. Be open, be open to learning, uh, be motivated to keep pushing boundaries. Do not give up. You know, things might not be easy at this moment, but it gets better. That's what I know for sure. And even when it gets better, it doesn't get easier either. So it doesn't. It never really gets easier in a way, but it gets better. That's what I would say. So fundamentally for me is that really be open-minded, be ready to push boundaries, and embrace possibilities and change. It's gonna change your life, really. Those are the things.
Embrace possibilities and change.
Yes.
Mercy, last thoughts.
So I'll say that coming from academic spaces, right? Like for Black women, those are not spaces that are naturally made to look like us or to see people that look like us, right? So you always have to strive to create them for yourselves or with your brothers who support you in creating those spaces. So for me, it's always looking back to see who's the next woman that I need to bring along this journey and empowering that woman to occupy these spaces and to remind them that they're yours, own them. Don't come and feel like you have to apologize to be in these spaces because there are people standing in solidarity with you. And again, looking at from mainstream academia, we're taught mainstream methodologies and epistemologies, but it's important for us to bring our lived experiences, to bring our cultures, to recognize that there is Afrocentric methodologies, there is indigenous methodologies that factor into the work that we do, and we cannot leave them behind, right? Looking at how do we decolonize methodologies of how we perform our research work and how do we make spaces to make sure that our voices are not left behind. So final words is always bring somebody along so the next person can be brought along as well, and always make sure that your authentic self is well represented. No apologies,
Always making sure that your authentic self is represented. I want to thank our panelists, Sulaiman Jallo and Mase Wetutu, for coming here today, for sharing with us, and for being candid on how to navigate some of the challenges that we find as Africans, as African scholars, as Black people, as accented people. All these things that are tied on our cultural beings, on our beings as Africans. All these things, I think it is important for us to understand that authenticity is very important and it takes you far. Mr. Jallo says that do not give up. Do not give up and ensure that you always keep good people around yourself. On the other hand, Lillian tells us to always push the boundaries as well. Push the boundaries, be authentic, and tell your story. Embrace it. Again, we shall be having more of these conversations. My name is Henry Sally for the African Alumni Association, and this was the post-event for the gown, the African Scholars Awards that we just celebrated last weekend. With us also was Catherine Bate, the Senior Volunteer Coordinator for the African Alumni Association. Thank you very much for following us. Continue following the African Alumni Association. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, if you have any insights on how we should engage with the community, please email us at africanalumni@gmail.com or via our Facebook channels or LinkedIn channels, and we shall get back to you. I want to congratulate these two incredible scholars and awardees, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day and see you soon.
Asante.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.